Whales, Tokenization, and Gesara Nesara. Today we'll talk about a movement that's attracting attention in the financial world, the European Union's new rules that could pave the way for a veritable billion-dollar race in asset tokenization. And here, when we talk about whales, we're referring to two worlds, the whales of the traditional financial market, and the whales linked to humanitarian assets and historical Gesara and Nesara bonds. Let's separate what each is, understand how they operate, and assess whether at some point, these two worlds might collide. EU news and traditional market whales. The European Union has just approved rules that allow banks to treat tokenized traditional assets the same way as conventional assets, without additional capital requirements. This means that a digitally represented security or commodity, when backed by a real asset, will have the same regulatory weight as the physical asset. This decision deviates from the Basel Committee's more restrictive guidelines, which require non-EU banks to apply a very high risk weight of 1,250% to these assets on a public blockchain. In practice, this regulatory relaxation makes Europe an extremely attractive hub for large investors, the so-called whales of the market. These whales are funds, banks, and institutional players with enormous capital, capable of quickly moving billions when they spot a strategic opportunity. The Gesara and Nesara whales. Now, there is another type of whale that does not operate in the same regulatory space. We are talking about the whales linked to Gesara and Nesara, large holders of historic bonds, humanitarian bonds, and sovereign assets. These holders do not move capital on stock exchanges or in traditional ETFs. They engage in redemption, asset liquidation, and fund redistribution processes focused on humanitarian projects, often within confidential international protocols and agreements. These whales don't buy and sell cryptocurrencies for immediate profit. They have been holding assets for decades, waiting for the global revaluation, VR, and the full implementation of the quantum financial system, where the generated liquidity will be directed toward economic and social reconstruction projects. Meeting points and considerations. Although the two types of whales operate in different worlds, there are possible points of intersection in the future. If tokenization advances within safe and regulated environments, there is nothing to prevent part of the Gesara and Nesara funds from being converted into sovereign digital assets to facilitate distribution and traceability. However, it is important to emphasize, these humanitarian whales can only use or move assets that are not already linked to the redemption process, as these values already have a specific destination, to serve humanity. Otherwise, their mission as guardians, who have held these assets for years, would be meaningless. And since the number of owners known as whales in this scenario is very small, they typically maintain very well-defined objectives, both in their conscience and in confidentiality agreements, known as NDAs, which govern all conduct and use of these resources. What unites these two worlds is their magnitude. Both deal with billions of dollars in value and have the potential to reshape entire economies, whether through market investments or by executing large-scale humanitarian projects. If you've stuck around this far, you understand, when we talk about whales, we need to consider the context. In the traditional market, it's the institutional giants seeking opportunities like those the European Union is now opening. In Gesara and Nesara, they are the guardians of historic assets, waiting for the right moment to release resources that can change the planet. And if these two worlds ever intersect, the combination of institutional capital and humanitarian funds could create an unprecedented impact on global economic history. So, sign up now and turn on notifications. Here you'll follow every whales movement, from the traditional market to the new financial system, and understand what's really at stake.